In 1978, a Milan boutique unlocked an era of spectacle that transformed fashion forever. Medusa symbols, supermodel runways, and scandals that could ignite newspapers worldwide became the language of a new kind of glamour. Versace wasn't just a brand, it was the nerve center of the 90s celebrity culture, powered entirely by a single visionary. Runways felt like global events. Red carpet moments became pop culture milestones, and a look could hit as loudly as a headline. But beneath that gold-plated surface lay a staggering risk. What happens when a legend vanishes overnight and a myth built on identity is suddenly leaderless? The answer is more complicated and more revealing than the story you think you know. Gianni Versace believed fashion should overwhelm the senses. In 1978, he opened his first boutique on Milan's Via della Spiga, filling its windows with clothes that looked nothing like the city's muted tailoring. Where others saw restraint, Versace poured out gold, turquoise, and hot pink. Baroque swirls, Greek keys, and Medusa heads stamped everything from silk shirts to evening gowns. For Gianni, the Medusa was not just a logo, it was a warning and a promise. One glance, and you would be hooked. Runway shows became acts of theater. Models did not just walk. They stalked, spun, and posed under stadium lights, their bodies draped in chainmail or printed silk. Loud music and flashing lights turned every collection into a spectacle. Gianni's runways were never quiet. They were carnivals of color and skin, with supermodels striding past velvet ropes and camera flashes. The front rows filled with musicians, actors, and royalty. But for the audience, the real show was on the catwalk. Each collection pushed boundaries. In the early 1980s, Versace experimented with metal mesh, making dresses that shimmered like armor but moved like water. His Baroque prints, inspired by Greco-Roman ruins from his childhood in Reggio Calabria, became instant signatures. By the late 1980s, even the home line, furniture, plates, and pillows carried the same riot of color and pattern. Versace's vision was total. Clothes, interiors, even the scent in the air at his shows belonged to his world. Fashion critics called it excess. Gianni called it liberation. He wanted people to feel powerful, sexy, and unstoppable. His shows did not whisper. They shouted. By 1991, the Versace runway was the most coveted ticket in Milan. Theatrics and design fused into a single, unforgettable experience. Every detail was calculated to leave an imprint on memory, on photographs, and on the culture itself. Before the era of front-row celebrities and viral moments, Versace made the runway itself the headline. The Medusa looked out from every corner, daring the world to look away, and nobody did. Tabloid editors scrambled for Versace stories as soon as the runway lights faded. By the early 1990s, Gianni Versace had engineered a system where every show and every dress could become front-page news. He did not just dress celebrities, he turned them into walking headlines. When Naomi Campbell, Linda Evangelista, Christy Turlington, and Cindy Crawford closed the fall-winter 1991 show lip-syncing to George Michael's Freedom 90, the moment ricocheted beyond the fashion press. Footage ran on MTV. Photos landed in papers, from Milan to Minneapolis. Even the models themselves became household names, as much pop icons as the musicians and actors in the front row. A few years later, a single dress would prove just how potent this formula had become. In 1994, Elizabeth Hurley stepped onto the red carpet in a black Versace gown held together by oversized gold safety pins. Paparazzi flashes exploded. Within hours, images of the dress flooded tabloids, morning shows, and glossy magazines. Hurley's name trended for weeks, and Versace's sales spiked. The safety pin dress did not just sell clothes, it sold the idea that wearing Versace meant instant fame. Gianni's team understood the machinery behind these moments. Publicists seeded dresses with the right celebrities. Photographers like Richard Avedon and Stephen Meisel shot campaigns designed to look like news events. Editors at Vogue and The Face clamored for exclusive access, knowing a Versace cover guaranteed higher circulation. In 1991 alone, fashion magazine sales in the UK jumped by double digits after the Supermodel finale, and Versace's Baroque prints started appearing everywhere, from hip-hop videos to sitcom sets. Tabloid culture became an amplifier, multiplying every runway stunt and red carpet gamble. Versace's Medusa logo was suddenly as recognizable as the Nike swoosh. The brand's presence was inescapable on television, in gossip columns, on the backs of movie stars and musicians. Fame itself became a kind of currency, and Versace minted it with every collection. Naomi Campbell once said that Johnny made them feel like they could do anything. He made them famous, not just beautiful, but with every headline, the stakes grew. Versace's power depended on constant attention. In a world hungry for spectacle, what happens when the spotlight finally moves on? If you are fascinated by the stories behind luxury brands and the power of pop culture, hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into the forces that shape fashion history. July 15, 1997. The world woke to news that Gianni Versace had been shot and killed on the steps of his Miami Beach mansion. Headlines circled the globe within hours. Outside Casa Casuarina, TV crews gathered and mourners left flowers by the gate. The man behind the Medusa was gone, and the future of his empire was suddenly uncertain. Inside Versace's headquarters in Milan, shock gave way to urgency. Phones rang non-stop. Buyers, editors, and partners demanded answers. With Gianni gone, every decision carried new weight. The family gathered, Donatella Santo and Donatella's husband, Paul Beck, forming a triage team to keep the company moving. Donatella, who had always been Gianni's closest collaborator, was now the face the world looked to for reassurance. Santo, who had managed finances since the beginning, took charge of stabilizing the business. Paul Beck focused on the menswear line, making sure no part of the house was left unattended. The first public act of resilience came in Milan, just weeks after the murder. A memorial service drew over 2,000 people, including Princess Diana, Elton John, Naomi Campbell, and Anna Wintour. The gathering felt less like a funeral and more like a summit, an entire industry coming together to mourn, but also to signal that Versace would not disappear quietly. Behind closed doors, the family held emergency meetings to sort out inheritance, creative direction, and public messaging. Allegra Versace, Donatella's daughter, inherited half the company, though she was only 11. Ownership remained firmly in family hands, but the creative engine was gone. The pressure to deliver was immediate. Versace's next major show was already on the calendar for October. Canceling was never an option. Instead, the event became a tribute, an emotion-charged runway staged in Milan, attended by Giorgio Armani, Donna Karan, Karl Lagerfeld, Cher, and Demi Moore. The show was both a memorial and a declaration that Versace would go on. A former Versace insider later recalled that there was no time to grieve. It was about keeping the lights on, keeping the myth alive. Every call, every meeting, survival was on the line. Within 3 months, the world saw Donatella step onto the runway, accepting applause not just for the collection, but for holding the house together. The spectacle continued, but now every look carried the weight of loss and the resolve to endure. Donatella Versace stepped into the spotlight with a platinum mane, smoky eyes, and a voice that carried both defiance and vulnerability. In the months after Gianni's death, she became the public face of the brand, appearing at photo calls, giving interviews, and standing front and center at every show. She did not try to mimic her brother. Instead, she built her own persona, a living symbol of survival, resilience, and unapologetic glamour. The press followed her every move, eager to see if the myth could last without its creator. Her first collections as creative director carried the weight of expectation. Critics watched for signs of collapse, but Donatella leaned into spectacle. She kept the runways loud, the prints bold, and the celebrity guest lists long. By 1999, Versace was once again the talk of Fashion Week. Donatella's image, equal parts rock star and matriarch, became inseparable from the house itself. She posed with supermodels and musicians, hosted parties that blurred the line between fashion and nightlife, and made sure that every collection felt like an event. Then, in 2000, a single dress reignited global obsession. Jennifer Lopez arrived at the Grammy Awards in a plunging jungle green Versace gown. The dress was a thunderclap. Its sheer fabric and tropical print splashed across every front page and television screen. Within 24 hours, millions of people tried to find images of Lopez online, overwhelming early search engines. Engineers at Google noticed the spike and soon launched Google Image Search, citing the demand for that one dress. In that moment, Versace did not just win the red carpet, it rewired the internet itself. Insiders called it the first viral fashion moment. The dress became a pop culture artifact, referenced in songs, parodied on late-night television, and immortalized in endless memes. Versace's Medusa was suddenly everywhere again, not just on runways, but in the DNA of the digital age. Supermodel Amber Valletta said that Donatella kept the fantasy alive. She made us feel like the show would go on, no matter what. Fashion critics like Vanessa Friedman described Donatella's approach as both a tribute and a transformation. She understood that in a world obsessed with novelty, survival meant becoming the headline, over and over, in new ways. For a brand built on spectacle, Donatella's persona was more than image. It was the engine that kept Versace in the conversation, even as the world changed around it. In the years after Donatella Versace reignited the brand's myth, the outside world began to change in ways no designer could control. The 2008 global financial crisis hit luxury spending hard. Suddenly, the appetite for bold, expensive statements shrank as consumers tightened their wallets. Versace, a house built on spectacle and high visibility, watched as demand for its most lavish collections faltered. Sales flatlined around 450 million euros in 2008, and operating losses piled up. By 2010, the brand's annual revenue hovered near 430 million euros, well below pre-crisis peaks. Retail partners cut back on orders, and even the most loyal clients began to hesitate. In 2010, Instagram launched, and the rules of fashion exposure flipped almost overnight. Where Versace once owned the runway and magazine cover, digital platforms handed influence to anyone with a smartphone. Trends spread at the speed of a swipe, and the power to shape taste shifted from editors and designers to a new breed of online tastemakers. For a brand that had thrived on orchestrated moments and carefully managed headlines, the rise of social media posed a new challenge. How do you stay visible when everyone can be famous for a day? Meanwhile, fast fashion giants like Zara and H&M were perfecting their own version of the spectacle. They could spot a look on the Versace runway and have a copy in stores within weeks at a fraction of the price. By 2013, fast fashion claimed more than 30% of the entry-level luxury market. Knockoff culture thrived, flooding the streets with Baroque prints and Medusa motifs stripped of their exclusivity. Versace's signature, once a guarantee of attention, became just one more scrollable image in an endless feed. The pressure to adapt grew relentless. Investors and analysts began to question whether the old formula could survive in a world that rewarded speed over legacy. Versace's leadership faced a stark choice: scale back the spectacle or find new ways to fund the fight. In 2014, the family agreed to sell a 20% stake to the Blackstone Group for 150 million euros, a move that valued the company at 1.5 billion euros. The deal brought much-needed capital for digital upgrades and global expansion, but it also signaled that the era of total family control was ending. The brand's future would now be shaped not just by taste and myth, but by the demands of the market. In September 2018, the Versace family signed away control of their legacy. Michael Kors Holdings, which would soon become Capri Holdings, purchased the House of Versace for $2.12 billion. The deal was headline news. One of the last great Italian family brands had joined a global conglomerate. Donatella Versace, who had been the creative force and public face for more than 2 decades, agreed to stay on as chief creative officer. The promise was continuity, but the reality was different. Versace was now one piece in a growing portfolio, measured against quarterly reports and global expansion targets. Press releases described the merger as a partnership, but behind the language of synergy, the stakes were clear. Versace's myth, once shaped by the instincts of a single family, was now filtered through boardrooms and financial projections. Donatella's role shifted from matriarch to executive, her creative decisions balanced against the demands of shareholders. The Medusa logo, born from childhood memories and built into a symbol of excess, now stood alongside brands like Jimmy Choo and Michael Kors on investor slides. In the years that followed, the pressure to modernize only increased. Capri Holdings pushed for more stores, broader product lines, and a larger share of the global luxury market. The pace was relentless. Donatella remained the public ambassador, but the question grew louder in industry circles. How long could the original spirit survive under corporate stewardship? By August 2023, another shift arrived. Tapestry, the American group behind Coach and Kate Spade, announced an $8.5 billion takeover of Capri Holdings. With the deal, Versace's fate moved even further from its roots. Donatella's creative authority, once absolute, became a ceremonial post. As the brand prepared for yet another transition, the prospect of a Versace house without a Versace at the helm felt less like a rumor and more like an inevitability. For decades, Versace thrived on personality, Gianni's vision, Donatella's glamour, the family myth. Now, as decisions are made by anonymous boards and distant executives, the brand stands at a crossroads. Can a house built on spectacle and identity survive when those identities fade into the background? Or does every myth, no matter how powerful, eventually become just another corporate asset? What do you think? Can a brand like Versace reinvent itself for a new era? Or is there something about its original identity that no amount of rebranding can ever replace? Let us know in the comments. Luxury today is less about spectacle and more about silent influence, but Versace's myth was always built on presence, not restraint. As legacy houses chase new markets and private equity shapes creative direction, the question is not whether Versace can survive. It is whether any brand can hold its soul when identity becomes just another asset. Let us know. Can true icons adapt, or is something always lost in translation?